Okay, guys, in this example, we're going to continue looking at the method of completing the square. But this one is a little bit modified because it's not ready yet. Why is it not ready? Unlike the solving quadratic equations by factoring, when we want to have a 0 on the right hand side and nothing else, here we want to have the x squared term and the x term on the left hand side, but everything else should be on the right hand side. So this plus 2 is not supposed to be there. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides so that we only have the squared term and the x term on the left hand side. And so that will make it a 45. And now we are ready for the complete the square method. Okay, so that part is just gonna go in here. All right, so next thing we need to do is figure out what number do we need to add to x squared plus 12x to make it a perfect square. Okay, so here's what you do. You take the number in front of x, including the sign, which is also very important because if it's negative, the negative would be part of it. In this case, it's positive. So we take that number, we divide it by 2. So just remember that that's the first step. Divide by 2, because this should be 2ax, if you remember perfect square trinomials. So it should be 2 times something. So what is that something? Well, if you divide by 2, that's going to be 6. Okay, so that something is important also. But then the last step is to square it. So square it. And 6 squared is going to be 36. Okay, so that's the number that we would need to add to both sides to make it a perfect square. So this is going to be x squared plus 12x plus 36 equal to 45 plus 36. Because remember, 45 was there. So when you add something to one side, you have to also add the same thing to the other side. Okay, now what will this be? So let's see. So this is going to be 36 and the other side would be 45 plus 36. So let me go to resources and just add them up, and that's going to give me 81. Okay, so that's that. The next step is to think of, okay, this is a perfect square, which means what? Well, it has to be a square of something. So what is that something? So first x squared, that means this is going to be x. Then remember when we were divided by 2, this step right here, that's going to go in here. And if this was a plus, then this would be a plus. But if this was a minus, then actually this would also be a minus. So why is that happening? Well, because x plus 6 multiplied by x plus 6, if you multiply it, you're going to get, if you FOIL, x times x, which is x squared, plus 6x, then plus another 6x, and then plus 36. So notice how these two become 12x, which is why we were dividing by 2 to figure out that number. But anyway, what that means is that we just verified that this is correct. So now we have a perfect square on the left-hand side, and we've got, looks like we got 81 on the right-hand side. Okay, so that means that over here we get x plus 6 squared equal to 81. All right, so the next step is to, once we got this, we're going to use what's called the square root property. So we basically wanted to solve by x to get rid of this squared right here. We do not want it there. So to get rid of it, you take the square root. So when you take the square root, you will take the square root of x plus 6 squared, which will cancel the square. But what about the 81? Well, square root of 81 is actually 9. Otherwise, you would have to just leave it as square root of 81. So I'm just going to leave it for now, even though I know that's 9. Okay? But the other thing you need to know, this square root property says that when you take the square root, you have to make the other side plus minus. Why is that? Because imagine that this was a number and you squared it, you would get 81, right? Square root of 81 squared is 81. But if you square a negative square root of 81, that's also going to be 81, because negative times negative is a positive. So it doesn't matter whether it's a plus square root of 81 or minus square root of 81. Both of them, when squared, would give you 81. So there are actually two solutions. That's what's called the square root property. So you have to understand, when you take the square root, make the plus minus on the other side. And then the last step is to subtract 6 from both sides. So that's going to give you x equals negative 6 plus minus square root of 81. So if at this point you had a, some not a perfect square like I got, I guess by accident, where this is actually 9, you could just type, like literally you would type -6 plus square root of 81 and -6 minus square root of 81. Now, I don't know if it's going to accept it because you can simplify it. So let's see. Yeah, it accepted it. So it's okay with these answers. However, if you were to actually compute it, this would be -6 minus 9 and -6 plus 9. So this would be -15, and the other answer is a 3. So I wonder if it's going to accept that, the simplification. Oops. Okay, let's try that and see what happens. Yep, it accepts that too.